You're listening to the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. How we doing? How we doing? Life is good. Everything is working out just the way it should. But want to address Paige Bueckers last night. Looked like she had a knee sprain. Looks like everything may be okay. Some soreness, but want to get into that. Paige Buecker, the number one draft pick in the WNBA draft, playing for UConn, and it was very interesting tackle that the player made against Paige Bueckers. It's what the tackle that she utilized is the tackle that is now off limits. It'll draw you a 15-yard penalty and a fine in the NFL. You can't do a drop hip tackle. And when I looked at that, I was a little bit disappointed. And, Paige got up and went to the official, and the other, Gino, kind of came out. But this one here, it got a little ugly for me. And here's why. Paige Bueckers is just battled back. And, the legs are going to still be a little weak only because, when you get surgery, it takes 2 to 3 years to get strong. But she's playing basketball, and to get in a game where a player dives through the legs. I understand we all teach players to dive on the floor. You kind of slide forward, right? Well, then when you get to rolling up a player's back leg, right? That's a drop hip tackle. That's illegal in the game, and it makes me. It takes. I'll tell you what it does for me. It takes me back to the age limit rule, right? I mean, it really does. And when you get something like that, and you're looking at somebody getting injured, you just got to look at that. You got to look at that from a different perspective, right? Because you're in this thing, and here's why I'm going here, folks. Because you got a problem going around in the NCAA women's basketball right now. You got a problem going on just about everywhere, right? But in NCAA women's basketball, you got big problems going on because well, you got it. I kind of brought it up, and I know a lot of people won't agree with me. And first of all, I want to thank you for tuning in to the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. And we always share with you, it's our opinion. And at the end of the day, if it turns to truth, we've given you the facts. And for those of you who are just joining us now today, welcome. We are an open platform. We encourage your opinions. And because at the end of the day, I can't be 100% right. I might be 99.999, but that 100% I'm not going to be right. But I'm bringing this up because Paige Bueckers, when you start dealing with players, and you start moving around like this, and you got this situation going as well in college and NCAA because now everybody's playing for money, okay? And the age rule and everything was put in place. And Paige Bueckers, 4-year player at UConn, which is perfect, folks. And don't get me wrong. I mean, if you looked at when they put that in, we didn't have AI. And I got to go with what Mark Cuban said. And Mark Cuban was like, well, people are going to go to college, get a degree. And he's like, for what? AI is coming. And the investment in it's going to mean that there's going to be specific degrees that you have to get. And so much to the standpoint that the college has adjusted to it. And they put in a 6-year plan now because, people have to have master's degrees. But let me get into that. That's Paige Bueckers, and she's okay. Number one pick. No one else is a pick. No one else is. Nobody bought tickets to see anybody else but Paige Bueckers with the Dallas Wings. So let's clear that up and praying she's okay moving forward, right? But that's a drop illegal tackle. But let's get on to the next subject. Dawn Staley, Coquese, Washington, right? And for those of you who don't know, I just read a pretty good piece. I went back and looked at the history of the WNBA and what it brought and what it showed me that there's always been dark side negotiations. What I found out really interesting is the fact that the age limit was put in place for ladies to get a college degree. And that's kind of bypassed, but that was a long time ago. And you look at it now, what players are doing now, their percentages of getting a college degree are higher than they've ever been. And let me tell you why, folks. It's not because the students are getting smarter. It's because the NCAA put a rule in that if you don't graduate, I think it's 92% to 95% of your student athletes, you lose a scholarship. So what did everybody do? They made the programs now degree proof, right? So that student's going to have managers, people taking notes, preparing for the test. Half the time, they don't even take tests in the classroom; they do it on the road. But that rule is there now. When you look at it, that's the rule. What's the age minimum? It's like 22, and it's bizarre because if you don't live in the United States of America, we don't hold you accountable. We say you can come in at 20, right? But I want to get to something here, and I want to talk about this because you got Dawn Staley, and you got also you got a situation that's brewing over there in Rutgers, right? And you got Coach Washington. And when you look at Coach Washington and she's dealing with Kiyomi, who is just a fabulous player, right? I mean, you're talking about a big time player that she recruited that they paid for, right? They paid her to come there. And now her and coach are having problems. Now, you take that same scenario being at Rutgers, and for those of you who don't know, the legendary coach at Rutgers was Vivian Stringer, right? I mean, Vivian Stringer was about as disciplined as you can get, played basketball a certain way, and was really no nonsense. Probably tough to play for. And you have to ask yourself if Vivian Stringer was coaching today, would it work? I don't think so. I don't think so. And that moves me along. You got you got Gottlieb over there at USC. She's just enjoying the show, right? But and Juju Watkins is just balling out of control, folks. There's nothing going to slow that down, right? With Juju Watkins. Juju Watkins is just playing good basketball. And you got to look at this because when you get over there to Miss Washington, this is what you got now in NCAA, and it's leaking fast, right? It's leaking because you got too many pro players. Okay, so you got MiLaysia Foley, right? Is over there at with Don, and Don's normally had the pretty in best of the best. She's very disciplined. That's why I think Dawn Staley is going to coach NBA basketball. She's gonna get so fed up with this because now the players are not the same anymore. And what people must understand, you got Malaysia over there, and what the women are experiencing right now in the game of women's college basketball are one and done. They're dealing with one and done. Elijah Foley was a one and done, right? I mean, and you get this where, okay, now what happens is the player, okay, is got to get under the scrutiny. And it's what Coach Washington's dealing with at Rutgers because you got to do it my way. Well, that's kind of hard when you got a pro player, right? Because for those of you who didn't know, I told everybody right when I first came in, I looked at the WNBA and I looked at it and said, hey, you know what? They got a lot of coaches don't need to be coaching because I could have beat some of the coaches they got in the WNBA, and I'm not kidding you, coach. I'm not kidding, folks. I could have walked in the WNBA and put some simple stuff in, transition defense and stuff. It's really easy to win when you don't know what you're doing, right? And so you get in this battle that Washington's in. And I'm gonna tell you, if you guys get a chance to look at some film, look at this player. This player's got a handle. I mean, they're saying on the level of Kyrie. I mean, she's not quite yo-yoing it like that, but she's yo-yoing it good enough that the men would expect the move and the women not even gonna know the move's coming, right? That's how good a player. That's a one and done, right? And so now you got this situation where you got Unrivaled, and you got Unrivaled sitting over there, and you got players who are ready to go pro. All right, this deal about okay, I'm going to stay in college. Now, I'm not downplaying the education. What I believe in America is every American is going to have a peak earning potential, whether it's at 65, 60, 50, 45, 35, 25, or it could be at 19 or 18 years old, as these young ladies are. That's going to be your peak. So these young ladies can make $3 million in 3 years, okay? You know how long it takes you to make $3 million working a $100,000 a year job? Just add that up. It's going to take you 30 years, right? But they're getting all the money in advance, and it's a high peak earning potential. But the college coaches are still thinking they're coaching in college. Now, here's the deal with college, folks, and I'll tell you this is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio podcast powered up by Fanatics. We're moving forward. Life is good, 225. But here's the thing about college coaches. And when I started entering and communicating with them, and you're looking at it, you're going from 2000. I mean, you're going all the way back to 212, right? That's when Vivian Stringer just was doing a great job of coaching and really could coach good, right? Vivian Stringer is a different type of coach, but she was disciplined. So you got Don in Malaysia, right? And they're getting benched, right? And this is just a weird deal because only Don's going to be able to go so far with this. I mean, at the end of the day, and she's saying transfer for what? Now, this situation is different because this is a homegrown player. Don's in South Carolina, players in South Carolina's family, everybody knows everybody. But it's not working. It's not working. And every time you bench this player, the player is ready to go pro. They want out of here. I'm everybody, folks. I'll tell you this in all fairness. Every player, and I looked at the rule, I looked at the history, why it was established. I looked at Northwestern Journal of Law, who says it's a totally illegal rule. The only deal about the age limit, it just hasn't been challenged in court. Eventually, it's going to be challenged, and they're going to have to bypass because you can't keep one and done or 1 or 2 years and done. Keep them in the NCAA, and so you got to play here 4 years. That's really asinine. Now, I'll tell you the difference between men and women. Men deal with one and done. They know the kid's one and done. He's going pro. Okay, let's get the year in. Let's play. Let's deal with it. We're done, right? Well, with the women, there's still women's basketball between men's basketball and women's basketball. Always been about 3, 4 years behind. I don't know why the women are more in depth into the rules of the game, and I think that what maybe kind of cause that. But when you get a player and you got Gottlieb, right? You get somebody like Juju Watkins, and you got her in there, and Juju just this is Washington. They bench a player, you lose by 50. Now you got to go say what? What do you expect the player to do? It's a disconnect, right? And Juju's out there. I mean, it's not even a game, right? And everybody's saying Juju Watkins, and you guys already know my position. That's the best player in the world, right? I mean, she's anytime you could play right in front of a player's face, shoot him over, and she's got her skill levels just off the chart, right? But Gottlieb knows Juju does. I don't need Juju Watkins for 4 years. Gottlieb, the head coach of USC, is not stupid, right? I mean, Dawn Staley isn't either. She really doesn't need MiLaysia Fulwiley for 4 years, right? Doesn't make sense, right? And now you got another player, Washington, whose player's got great handles, and she's still in college. So I'm not going to get into that, but I can tell the disconnect. And what I would say of the women's game 4 years behind, and I've been in there with the NCAA, and the NCAA is a very unique organization. What they do, how they do it. Now they've lost their jurisdiction. And for some reason, I mean, this is something that a collaboration that was made between the NCAA and the WNBA back in the test of time, right? I mean, you talk 25 years ago, right? And so now you're here today. Players are getting paid. Okay, they're getting paid to play basketball. They're playing in college, and they're getting ready to go get paid and play in pro, right? And then everybody's got NIL. So really, what can you do to me, coach? You can't. Only thing you can do is not play me. And if you don't play me for enough minutes, I'm leaving. I'll tell you that. I mean, that's a fact. You want to check the portal? The portal's full of players who didn't get the money they were promised and didn't get the playing time they were promised, right? So to go get a player like Washington did, you got a WNBA point guard, Kiyomi. And here's what happens. When you do something like that, now you made your promises. That you got there. You paid her to be there. And now you're trying to coach her like a regular player because your system is more important than the player. And that's got to change. I mean, you can go all the way back to Coach K. It doesn't matter. One and done. Juju Watkins is so bored in college basketball. It's ridiculous, right? It's almost like cruel and unusual punishment. You got Paige Bueckers goes out there and gets hurt, right? So I mean, it's a weird deal. And when you got the number one pick, you don't want to make a mistake with that. I mean, and if you want to know, ask the Sacramento Kings, right? Because the Sacramento Kings, let me tell you what happened. Vlade Divac was the general manager and Sacramento Kings, and they selected Marvin Bagley, right? Number 2 pick in the draft, right? And so those are moves that get you fired, right? And the owner kind of breaks up and says, you don't know what the heck you're doing. Because at the end of the day, why you were picking Bagley, okay, and rightfully so, Bagley's a great player. I mean, he came out of Duke, okay, so he got a blue blood, no doubt about it. And players come out of Duke can play, and he can play, right? But at the end of the day, he ain't no Luca, and they bypassed Luca, right? They bypassed him because he was 18 years old. Okay, he was the MVP of the EuroLeague. He won the championship, and then all of a sudden they said they don't know if he's good enough in the NBA. Now, when I watched Luca, and I watched it, but again, I told all my buddies, and these are 40-year friends, Luca's better than Larry Bird. They laughed, they laughed, they laughed. And I looked at the intangible. Everything a player does, he has to have or she has an intangible. And when Luka shot, it just fell through the bottom of the net. He never touched the rim. It would go right through the bottom. And that's a rangefinder. And that's what I tell you about Angel Reese. When she shoots, she doesn't touch the rim. So it's a different game of basketball. But you got to understand, these are players that went pro. They're God gifted to play the game. And folks, for me, I never got in between a high school player and their coach if they played summer ball. I just couldn't do it. It was like, you got to spend 9 months with that person and 3 months with me. I'm not going to get involved in that. And you got to do what the coach has said, right? Because the coach is there for a reason. And when you get to college, it's kind of the same thing. Parents, some try, right? But the coach that's coaching in college, that's their only job is to coach, right? And when people say that, and people throw this around a lot, they'll say, "Okay, this person's a terrible coach." Well, what does that mean? What I mean, there's only 88 different scenarios in basketball, 88 different situational basketball. Which one are you talking about, right? Well, you get these guys in the pros, Luca and Bagley. Luca's going to be the MVP. They want to be the face of the league. That's where I'm going. When you got one and dones, Kyrie Irving, LeBron James, sometimes I'm telling you now, NCAA women's basketball, I dealt with them. They changed the adjoining states rule on me, and I knew why because I used the entire United States to recruit players, and they were 3 years behind on that. And the man had already changed the rule, right? And the other rule, I was doing some work, contributing work for Bleacher Report. I was watching Louisville play a basketball game, and one of the guards on Louisville got hurt, broke his leg, right? And the scenario, the NCAA looked at the rule. My good friend, Dr. Thomas Reed, out of College of DePage, Positive Coaching Alliance. We sat there and he communicated. We communicated for hours until I completed the story and I dropped it on a bombshell, ran through Bleacher Report, hit all the media groups, and Louisville wasn't allowing the parents to come to the game. And the parents didn't have money to come to the game, but Louisville at the time, Patino's making $7 million a year. And it dropped such a heavy bombshell on the NCAA that within the next week, the NCAA changed the rule and said the schools can fly players to the game. So that's kind of what happened, folks. And but the one and dones, I'm telling you, got to get these guys out of there. These women are going to run into a big pile up. I seen it in the recruiting circuit and the NCAA women on that side. I mean, it's going to be a problem because in the women's side after the game, the exposure, all the coaches are there. I'm walking up, want to talk. Hey, coach, how you doing? Oh, I can't talk to you. Well, with the men, you're on the other side. There's a full-on picnic going on. Everybody's sitting down at tables, having drinks, and they're talking all the time. It's like there's a rule that exists for women, and then there's no rule that exists for men. And the women follow the rule. And so now the women are going to have to figure out how they're going to fix this because you got too many one and done staring you down the line. And that's really what's going down. All right. So Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast, I'm bringing it to you. Age limit, one and dones. That's what's going on. You got a one and done at Rutgers. You got a one and done over there, up there at South Carolina. They want out. They want to go play pro ball, right? This age limit's got everybody kind of in the wrong way. Dawn Staley, I'll tell you this. Dawn's going to get fed up because the kids are not the same anymore. And the way she used to recruit them and the way they're coming in now, Dawn had to give them just a blasting saying, none of you guys on this team are WNBA ready, right? So that tells me where the players' mentality, they're saying they're ready, coach saying you're not, and it's just a standoff. And once that happens, I'll tell you what, Dawn's going to be in the WNBA, right? Washington over at Rutgers, same thing. Got Kiyomi, got a big-time player, beautiful handles. Really is a one and done. And let's go ahead and move them on. But you got a 4-year rule, and you got to ask yourself, with the portal, why wouldn't somebody else walk into the portal and just offer the players $1 million to $2 million come play for me? That's the game they're up against. It's a tough game, folks. There ain't no winning. I just wanted to throw Vivian Stringer, man. It was a joy, but she was hard as nails. Could Vivian Stringer have coached these kids today? I don't think so. They're just not strong enough. And when you're dealing with the new generation and they're coming in Gen Z, you got to know something. These guys are not thick-skinned as some of the players you've had, right? But Juju won last night, man. She put a show on, right? Didn't have to do much. Number 4 in the country, and you win by 40. And they're benching their best players to make a point. Well, you'd have lost the game anyway. Don and MiLaysia. Man, that's an on-stone feud. That's a deep down Southern. Hey, Don, you and MiLaysia, why don't you just play one-on-one, whoever wins? You just go that way, right? If because this is some Glory Road stuff, and if you haven't seen Glory Road, okay, she's telling Coach Dawn Staley, Don, if a coach, she doesn't call her Don, that's for sure, but Coach, if I play your way, I can't win that way. But you got to let me play my game, and that's where Don's got to go, okay, let's do this. I'll let you play your game, but you got to play my game. And they got to settle this because South Carolina is supposed to win the championship. But if you let this get in there, it's going to be tough, right? So it's a battle, and got benched again in the win over North Carolina. This is going to keep going. Juju's Juju. We know enough about that. I'm praying for Paige, get healthy. Paige does a good job, and and like I said, I got Juju number 1. Other people, you love Caitlin, the whole deal, but that's why we do what we do, right? Because Marvin Bagley, number 2 pick by the Sacramento Kings, and guess what? Everybody thought that was a great pick, kind of like Mike likes Juju, but somebody else likes somebody else. It's okay. But at the end of the day, here's the deal. Luka was picked, and guess what? He's much better than Bagley. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast, WNBA.